Good afternoon and welcome to the special edition of Hindustan Times Dialogues. Now, ever since the pandemic started last year and hit us here in India, one of the things and one of the groups that have been majorly affected are school children. In fact, estimates say that there are about 1 billion children who, for the first time who are out of school at the same time. They've just been locked out. And the tragedy of it is that many of those children may never go back to the school system again. So one of the things that has been talked about ever since the pandemic started is digital divide. Is that becoming the big challenge for our education system? To talk about that and to discuss and exchange the various shared experiences, we have a stellar list of panelists today. Let me just introduce them to you. From the Azim Premji University and Foundation, we have Associate Professor Rishikesh B, and they've done a whole study on the impact of online education and the kind of atmosphere that we've had ever since the pandemic started. We have the principal of the ITL Public School here in Delhi, that's Sudha Acharya. We have the principal of the Singhania School, Revathi Srinivasan, and the principal of Mount Carmel School, Akash Roy Chowdhury, and a counsellor who joins us, that's Renu Singhla. I want to start with you first, Professor Rishikesh. If you could take us through, because I think your study, I was looking through the releases that you all shared with the media, and even though it's been a few months now that you concluded this study, but your survey looked at 80,000 children and the kind of impact that you saw that online education was having on them. Now, as a spoiler alert, and I think that the big headline that came out was, it's not working too well. But if you could share with us and the other panelists and the people who have joined us now on HT's website, on our YouTube channel, and on Facebook, if you could just share with them some of the highlights and some of the things and the nuances of a study like this. What does it mean for all our children who are now having to deal with online education?
Thanks, Sunita. Hello, everyone. So our study was not that dated, or rather, in fact, it's been just a couple of months since we released. And also, given that it was a quick turnaround study, the data was collected just about a month before we finally released the report. And so it was right in the middle of the pandemic when various state governments across the country were trying to imagine how to ensure that education continues for children. So we covered 5 states and 26 districts. Out of these, there were 3 states which in fact had some kind of a online learning environment happening. And what we found was not surprising, because there have been many researchers from across the globe pretty much pointing towards that. One is, of course, this issue that we all know of, which is access. And like countries such as ours, access to internet facility is very poor. And when we don't have that kind of a connectivity, online education just doesn't make sense. So we in fact should keep that aside, because that anyways is a big issue. What was surprising in terms of the finding is how ineffective whatever online access was possible was allowing children to experience. It was not education in any sense of the term. And that is what, not just what we saw, but that is what even teachers shared with us. And as you may have seen in our report, we nearly had 1,500 teachers speaking to us. And majority of them, and when I say majority, it's 85% of them speaking to us to tell us that this is a completely ineffective way of trying to engage children in an educational process. And I think all of us who are involved in education would appreciate the fact that education is much beyond just learning things from the textbook. And so that is precisely what came out in this survey, that the nature of education makes this online process a very suboptimal one. It just doesn't address those issues that education is supposed to address, or it doesn't support the kind of processes that education is expected to help children carry on with. So for instance, when we look at an educational process, We are looking at observation. We are looking at discussions. We're looking at all this getting synthesized through collaborative efforts. Now, all this is completely missing, even in a very well established online process. And that was really hitting us in the survey, because anywhere and everywhere, almost every teacher speaking to us was coming up with various incidents that was reiterating some of these facts. So let me pause here, telling you that it was a very stark, dark reality out there for us when we
Are
did
you
this study.
saying are you saying that children would have been better off? Because I know that for a lot of people, they were scrambling to get their data upgraded so that they could have enough data that they could, work from home and also have their children be in school. Are you saying that perhaps it would have been a better idea to just give the children a rest from the entire education system, maybe go through their books by themselves, instead of putting everyone through what you're now saying for a lot of people was sheer trauma?
Absolutely. And I wouldn't say that just let them free, because there has to be this continuous engagement with formal learning. In fact, there was a study which continues to happen where Brown and Harvard University students are trying to see as to what is the kind of drop in learning. What they did find is that a drop in math learning in the US was 64% in the online mode. And it was close to 75% for those children coming from low income backgrounds. So one has to engage in a formal process. But then what we have found is that online mode is not that. It could be sending out books to children's homes. It could be sending out worksheets. It could be then feedback on those worksheets from teachers. So not letting them completely free and do what they want, but engaging in different other ways is what we think would be the way forward.
Wow, that actually comes as quite a reality check, especially in a week that if you're in Delhi, a lot of senior school students have come back to school. I know you're in Bangalore, Rishi, but here in Delhi, a lot of students have come back to school for senior classes today. So I want to just go across to some of the principles now. Sudha Acharya, if I can start with you, do you agree? I see you nodding a lot there while Professor Rishikesh was speaking. Do you agree with this? Do you feel now that your work is going to be double, not just welcoming children and getting them, but also perhaps undoing some of the harm that online education has done?
Yeah, definitely. I somehow agree with Professor Rishikesh. But school is not a place just for content delivery. When we faced lockdown or closed down, completely closed down time period, first thing, my priority was to train my teaching faculty. Immediately overnight, they shifted to online platform. So they were required to give proper training how to access these platforms which are available to us, be it Microsoft Team or Zoom or Google Link, whatever we give them adequate training. We never started with academic skill, first of all. When we went back to student, we first focused on holistic well-being of our students. Content was our last priority. How are they at home? I mean, they were devoid of their school routine, their schedule. School is a place where socialization takes place, where skills, 21st century skills, experiential learning, collaboration, thinking happens. It's not just a place where only teaching takes place. We are all learners. So they were missing that very badly. I will tell my school's anecdotes and experience what I did, what experimentation I did. Right in the beginning, first priority was to give training to my teachers. First thing, we concentrated on that, empowered them how they can access and empower themselves with online teaching techniques and all. But we started with building a routine and structure for my students. You won't imagine, we started the day with brain gymming, some exercise. Teachers played the role of parents, parents played the role of teachers. The gap between parents and teachers role somehow we tried to minimize. So we were concentrating on their holistic well-being. content was our last priority. So we were thinking of how they can make a sandwich for themselves when parents are busy in their work from home, or how they can help their parents, self-directed learning, how they can actively engaging them for the whole day. So
Right.
when we were approaching parents, they were highly appreciative, especially the young ones. The whole family was available to us, grandparents, parents, everybody was attending the classes. So that
Yeah.
was the point when we could realize that we can do much more than content delivery. Especially my school is an inclusive school where a lot of special needs children are there. So,
So, Miss Acharya,
earlier,
would you say that because you had this kind of vision of a holistic education, would you then say that your teachers wouldn't feel like the 85% of teachers that Azim Premji University surveyed, that they felt less frustrated than them?
they were not. I mean, we had, teachers first, I have to take care of their mental well being. But as the
Yes.
lockdown period continued, I find teachers, we are talking about mental health of students community. I will focus on mental health of my teaching community, what I did for them. I mean, they were also finding a space for themselves with the family, lot of pressure. And I can tell you that domestic violence and children going out of formal education system, child labor, child abuse, child marriage. I have got EWS, economically weaker section children, and lot of special need children. So what we did, just 1 minute, I'll specifically
Yes,
tell
please
what
go
I did.
ahead. Yes, go
There
ahead.
are 21 varieties of children with different challenges are available to us. A lot of disparity, inequality, geographical identity, socioeconomic status, gender, all these things, special needs. So what I did for my special need children, category wise, I made a cluster of parents. Every day in the evening, those who were having specific learning disability, parents, we all together sat down, and what are the common problems, what are the behavioral problems they are observing, how aggressive children are, how to build a routine for them, and 24-hour how to engage them. So, and what all assistive devices I can bring for them. Special need children, they were missing their one-to-one special educator sessions, speech therapy, occupational therapy, and all. We did that networking for them, connecting to those people and connecting parents, and we are a part of it. So my homebound program was a success during COVID-19, which was not earlier, because parents were not available. Now
I
parents were
see.
equal stakeholder and partner, so we were telling them the homebound program, how to implement it, and we are a part of it. So visually impaired children, hearing impaired children, we gave them assistive devices. And as a part
Okay.
of CRT, we are actually developing e-content for special need children, how they can
Okay.
universal accessibility of e-content. Similarly, as a
Okay.
part of Mano Darpan for the mental health, in our school, we developed a interact club of peer educators, strong peer educators who were taking care of mental health of their youngsters.
So I can see that
Some
you
innovative
took
approach.
these, right, so you took these special conditions and you actually tried to convert that into somehow an advantage, or try to make that work, really. Miss Srinivasan, how do you think some of the the grim realities of what the children said, the surveyed children, which the university's found findings, did you see that being reflected in your students as well? You'll have to unmute yourself, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I think when I see this whole technology and our own society, the fabric of our society, I can see social inequalities, economic inequalities everywhere. So I think one should have taken into consideration that, yes, this digital divide is there to stay. But how do we sort of face this kind of a divide is what, and everybody is talking about a divide where it is about devices and no devices. My problems are different. It's not just about divides coming because of an access with access and without access. It's also coming because I don't know how to use technology, and there are children who are so much advanced that they can do coding by themselves. So again, the gap increases, and divides come because of that, even in a classroom. The third kind of a divide that's coming out of all of this is a divide between generation of parents versus students and children, if I can see. And you'll be surprised. Parents want to dictate terms as to how to hold the device, how to catch it, how to keep it in front of them. So everything is being monitored, and children like the independence. They want to learn it by themselves. The whole platform of technology or any technologically related education is all about self-directed learning. It's about a lot of initiation that the children should have for themselves. It's about learning by themselves to some extent. All that they are getting as aids are the tools that we are using, through technology, or using technology as a tool. And I think that's what stays. Personally, for me, I have 4 schools, and all 4 schools are across the country, 5 schools, and all of them are across the country. 2 of them, of course, happen to be in Thane, where I am also. But there's a school, and most of them are in semi-rural or rural areas.
Yes.
So one of my schools in Madhya Pradesh is a story I'd like to share, because that's a story typically of what Professor Rishikesh mentioned. It's a school, and I really think that uh, maybe this pandemic gave us, or the lockdown gave us, this opportunity to revolutionize education. So all that we have to do is to start rethinking education, redefining education, and break norms. So that's exactly what we did. I think it's a huge risk, but it's a risk worth taking. And I'm going to give you the story of the Mohalla school. This is my school in Madhya Pradesh, in the very interiors of Madhya Pradesh. And we are in a place which is Chindwara, but not properly in the city of Chindwara. We are away from there. We're almost an hour and a half by road away from there. So what we did was, we realized that children do not have devices. If they have only their father's one smartphone at home, where the father takes it out to work. Most of them are villagers, and all the children in the school come from different villages in and around the town. And what we realized was the villages were not too far away, yet it was not possible for them to come. Then the government announced that from October onwards, that 9th to 12th can come to school. We realized that the children were really wanting to come, and many of them had huge gaps in learning, because though they had devices, because of the interrupted services, networking services, they could not get it really right. So we started to redo things again. That's when it struck me that if our students cannot come to school, can we take our school to the children? So what we did was, all the 5 villages nearby, we went around hunting for sabhagrahas, that is halls, wedding halls and places like that. They're not very huge in that small town, but yet we got halls, and we went and asked them what is going to be the rent for us. So they said that you're doing such a good service, we don't want any rent. We converted all these sabhagrahas into schools. And my teachers living in those villages, we requested them to teach over there. The children from standard 1 to 8 were asked to report to the village school itself. So all the children from that particular village reported to that particular village school in that sabhagrah, in that hall. So also for 4 other villages. We have 85% attendance over there. And the children timings are all very different. So, it's not a crowd at any point of time. It is, and the teacher, the only condition that we had for our teachers is that you may be teaching standard 9 and 10, but today and for this next 3-4 months, till the time we tide over this problem, you will have to teach even grade 1 and 2. And all of them agreed, because normally very senior teachers don't do that, but in a normal school, but they all agreed, and they started to teach in the school. So I asked these children, so what do we call our school? Because our schools are normally called Singhania schools. So I asked them, what are we going to call our school? And they said, Singhania Mohalla School. And that's how they are known today. And all our children are coming to school.
That's amazing. So basically you realize that, that what they found in the survey was something that you immediately realized, and you realized that you had to do in-person teaching, because it just wasn't going to work. They weren't good. Your students weren't going to have devices.
Absolutely. We had to find a solution for those who don't have devices. Whereas if I come across to my own schools over here in the towns and the cities, I didn't have a problem.
Right.
Because where we found there
Those
was,
sabagres, were they open air? Like, were they airy enough?
no, they
Like,
were
how did you?
halls. They were
Okay,
very
okay,
halls.
but they were just big.
Very
Okay.
halls. Yeah, they were maybe about 1,000 square feet. I wouldn't say it was very big also.
No, thank you for
1,200
sharing
square.
that. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's really interesting to learn how you responded to a difficult situation of where the children just wouldn't have a device, and so how you organize that school, and that perhaps is what needed to be done. Akash Roy Chowdhury, what did you find? What was the biggest challenging scenario that emerged, and how did you tackle it?
I think the biggest challenge was to get the parents and children on board with online education. We are a school which has about 25% EDC. We don't call them EWS, we call them EDC, which means economically deserving candidates. And plus about 300 children that we actually ferry from the slum, give them uniforms, feed them, and then give them education too. So we had this large group of children that we had to take care of, and so to get them on board was the toughest challenge in the very beginning. If you were in Delhi, the thing was that Delhi was in complete lockdown, and so we were not so free as Mrs. Srinivasan and their schools to do these mohalla things. So we had to rethink. We had to train our teachers, as Mrs. Acharya said. We had to rejig the whole education viewpoint. For example, we always used to tell our students we don't allow mobile phones into our campuses. And one of the first things that happened was that we had to give the children the mobile phones. And these children were in the very beginning, in about April, they were ecstatic. They were so happy that they didn't have to go to school. They had mobile devices in their hands. They could lock themselves up in the room. They could cover them. I mean, they could blank out their camera just in audio, and nobody can do anything to get them on screen. So that was the first thing that happened. Of course, for the EDC children, we and the slum children that we cater to, we actually gave them devices. But one more thing that came to our knowledge was you can have a device but may not have an internet connection. You may have a device and an internet connection but no electricity, and so the things get really compounded. We also have a large number of special need kids, and those kids are, if you notice the number of kids now for particularly low income groups and slum children, the incidence of special needs is much more than in the urban population. So we had to rejig the whole thing. Plus, this is also one thing we found out, that parents lost jobs, especially if you are in Delhi. They lost jobs, especially of the economically deserving candidates. And so we now started to have a growing population of parents that were unable to pay fees. And so what happened was that they were not able to buy devices, or they were not able to recharge their phones or handheld devices, or they were not even able to pay for electricity. So this thing was getting compounded. And one of the things that we had to really do was to give them the ability to connect, those that could. So we bought devices for them. We bought internet SIM cards for those devices for them. We couldn't do anything about electricity, but we hoped that many could join. So as a school,
Wow.
we actually have had classes from nursery to 12, right from April to today.
Can you give
Uh,
me?
te-
I know this must be like a really broad question, but how many SIM cards would you have bought? Can you give us an indication?
total about 125, 130 SIM
Wow.
cards.
And
So
would I can imagine, like you said, like electricity is a problem, but it would have also been perhaps a problem to find, like people would have 2 children, to have them,
Yes,
like
yes.
how do they both?
Even in the urban population, the mother and the father have the
Yeah.
phones.
Yeah.
WhatsApp groups are only in the parents' phones. The children were not given phones. We discouraged parents to give phones up till class 7 to the parents. And now suddenly the parents have to manage with their own work, holding on to their jobs,
So
and to give the
difficult.
phone to the child. That was a very big issue.
But you managed, you think? Or you
We
did the
think we
best that you
managed.
could?
Yeah, exactly. We did the best
Yeah.
that we could. I just think about those nursery kids that got admission in nursery in 2020 and never entered in one day of school,
Yeah.
and got most probably addicted to the devices or the
I
computer
know.
screen. And
My
so
God,
what you said
yes.
earlier was to unlearn those habits is going to be a long time consuming job, especially for counselors.
No, hats off to all you teachers, because even though, we are all speaking from a position of privilege, and we are all easily doing our discussion in top-notch data in all our devices, and perhaps have more of them. But, even in our situation, we can just see how the kind of options that schools have come up with. I know that my son's school, they've said that, they from getting quarterly fees, they went into monthly, and said that, people can just break it up into little bits now, whatever's easier. So hats off to schools for responding to these special circumstances. But it's just been a nightmare, I think, for parents and children trying to, the suicide of the LSR student was one of those instances. I mean, one could just feel her trauma at not being able to take her classes, attend her classes, which led her to take such a tragic step. So, Ms. Singhla, just take us through some of the experiences that you've learned, because as a counselor, parents, I don't know if parents shared their kind of this desperation, this what they were going through. Could you tell us something about that?
Yes, Sunita, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about it. I remember initially parents used to call and ask, ma'am, should we give and buy a device for our child? Should we buy him a mobile phone? He is insisting on it. So we had no option just to say, yes, please get them, because otherwise their schooling, their classes will not be possible. So parents were inquiring. They didn't want to buy, or there was problem, financial problems, but they had to buy for their children for their schooling, right? So besides this, the problems that, as Dr. Sudha said, their mental health was taken care by school, by authorities. They were given seminars. Uh, they were given training on how to tackle classes online. Everything was done. For students, what I feel, basically there were three issues that we had to handle. One, the isolation part. They were completely isolated, and especially the ones who were on the other side of the digital divide. They were the ones who were totally cut off from the schooling. They wanted to join, but they had no option to join, right? And then second was that fear of the disease. I remember one of my students calling me one day and saying, ma'am, I am in a big problem. What to do? I asked her, what is the problem? My mother is having fever and I am alone. I don't know how to handle it. So that fear of disease was also there. I had to tell her how to call up her grandparents and take help from them and do things. Little cooking, I asked her, are you doing cooking? Little cooking, it is very important for you to eat and be healthy and right. So that was one issue, and school was definitely, and coping with isolation was also very, very important. I was talking to my son yesterday in US. So he said, Mama, those who are on the other side of the divide, they have this problem of coping with isolation. If I feel low and I feel little down, I put a cartoon on my phone and I feel elated. I feel better. But these people who don't have the cell phones and the computers and laptops, how do they come out of it? So they are going deeper and deeper into this isolation and depression and feeling lonely and not getting way out. But soon we are hoping the pandemic to be over, and yes, they will come back to school and things will be better for them.
Well, that's what we're hoping for. That's really what we're hoping for. And with the numbers going down and children coming back, would you like to come in over here, Rishi, and comment on just some of these experiences that people have shared? Where now that people are coming back, and I know what you've said about online, there are still risks right now. We hear horror stories from the UK and the US of numbers still rising. Would you say, from just extrapolating from what your survey showed, that it's time now for people to just for policymakers to get children back in?
I would think so, yes. Analysis that has looked at various age groups, we would that the younger ones are the ones who are in less risk of the infection. So taking all precautions, keeping all the norms in place, I think that is really the way forward. Which already, as Ms. Srinivasan said, the way they have tried out, in the mohallas, or as Dr. Acharya was talking about the various efforts. Similarly, once many state governments realized the fallacy of going online, they also established many such programs. Hamara Ghar, Hamara Vidyalaya in MP, or Vidyagama in Karnataka. This is precisely what Ms. Srinivasan was talking about, getting the teacher to where the children are. And so now, but then, we have a possibility of getting children back into not really a complete regular school with all their friends in, but then at least phase wise in a face to face mode, wherein they can go about school in the way that it ought to happen. As Dr. Acharya was saying, that schooling is not just about learning, right? It's about the socio-emotional aspects. It's about growing together. It is about playing, and these all lead to cognitive development. In fact, when people today speak about how coding is so critical, what they don't realize is, yes, coding is very useful. It is critical for cognitive development, but not without the story telling, not without the singing, not without the playing. Together, they make holistic education possible, and that is possible only when we get children back. And I think children have to come back. Parents are ready. Our survey also shows that more than 90% of parents are ready to send their children back into school. It is this middle class, with all our heightened and fear and things like that, that we are holding back so much. But otherwise, people have realized that with safety precautions, the risk is really low, and we can in fact have children back in school, and that is really the way forward. It is unfortunate that most governments are opening only the 10th and 12th, because this is not for education, it is only for exams, right? But then if you're really looking at continuing education for children, I think it should be decentralized, and schools should be taking the decision. And even if the government has to take decision, it will have to be at the Gram Panchayat level or the corporation level, not really at the state level.
Interesting. And hopefully policymakers are listening to that. They're really listening to the kind of needs that the children have, that they get people back in, as you said, with precautions. Ms. Acharya, what will your focus be when you welcome children back? If not immediately, but perhaps in the new academic session, what will you immediately focus on?
Yeah, when Delhi government passed the order that now you can open up class 10th and 12th, first thing I did is to go back to my parents. Last Saturday, I organized a session with my parents, whole school community, of course, focusing on 10th and 12th parents, that how I will welcome back my students, what they are expecting from school, what I am going to do. Schools need to open up to minimize short-term losses in learning and long-term losses in human capital formation and diminished economic opportunities. If schools remain closed, maybe it will take years together to fill up that learning gap. So I have planned grand planning to welcome my class 10th and 12th. Right in the first day, there will be no teaching. Let's welcome back. When I completed that parents session, my my head girl first gave me the message. Thank you, ma'am, very much. You spoke about our mental health. Our parents do not understand what we are going about. I mean, we have lost our private space of that peer interaction, that happy moments. So they do not understand that. And I would share one story as a part of Manodarpan, Prime Minister's Atmanirbhar program. Manodarpan platform 24/7 helpline is on. So as a part of that, one child wrote to me that right from morning 5 o'clock till 11, he's on desktop and he's studying. First 4 hours school teaching learning process, after that coaching, after that self study. And I know I do well generally in school, but I have lost my self esteem. I have no confidence that I will get through my competitive exam. I don't know where do I stand.
Poor
This kind of
student.
question is
Yeah.
coming. So that is very, very disheartening. So here parent engagement and active engagement, somewhere it is getting lost. So what I have
Yeah.
done in my school, that when they come back, first be good listener. Let my teachers listen to their stories, what they went through, lockdown diaries. In between we have done that, whatever you want to, just not teaching learning session, one session just to express yourself, anything. Even my teachers have organized parties with dress code, with music, with food, just to enjoy themselves, just informal talking, what is happening in your life. So we have decided that listen to them with a heart. We
Yes.
can do together with our mind, heart, and hands. So instead of going back to content delivery immediately, first let them, we'll try to bring them back to the routine schedule, and how we can take care of their digital well-being as well as physical well-being.
Yeah.
We have
And I
organized
think
few
I
trips
think
there.
I think for parents the big lesson to learn is how not to immediately put the pressure on the children to make up for the time that is lost. I think a lot of people are thinking, my child has been deprived of proper education, and then to pile on that pressure, that is so that that child who's sitting there from 5 to 11, that doesn't become the norm for a lot of children. Ms. Srinivasan, what are you going to focus on? What do you think is needed as soon as they come back?
I think there has to be a mental preparedness that should be there. So I think 10 days before the actual reopening, mental preparedness for teachers, parents, and students. I think that's very important. While we've had a lot of events from photography fairs and fashion shows and all the events that you can call it as celebrations, we've done science exhibitions. I had scientists from across the globe talk to our children, do a lot of programs. I think what is really important for them is to just be themselves now, and also be able to accept the situation as it is. And for that, a kind of a mental preparedness is required. It's also is very essential for us to give them that calm and that peace within, however chaotic the world outside may be, and for which I think a lot of sports is required, because that's what they actually did not have. They love sports. So I think giving them a lot of physical exercises, not just by the way of mass drills, but a lot of sports, lot of activities which are team-based activities, taking all the precautions in mind and keeping that in mind. So while the government may say that we will have all of these just for 10th and 12th, for the sake of their practicals and clearing of doubts, I think the purpose of opening schools cannot be that alone. Because
Yeah.
academics is it's fine, but I think that needs a first. If I'm not mentally fit, and I'm not able to accept this. I am no position to actually study and do very well in class. So that's very
I,
important. So I think that's something that I really, and not just the mental preparedness of children. Let's also think about the teachers. Teachers have also gone through the same device
I
problem, the
agree.
same
I
internet
agree.
problem the teachers have gone through. And everyone says a teacher's job is a nice job. You go in the morning and come back in the evening. It's no longer like that. They work overtime all through the night because they have doubts. All the teachers have become counselors now. Because if class teachers do not become counselors, today's world you cannot live in, because the kind of problems children have are real and imaginary, because that's also there, and let's accept that. So keeping that in mind, the teachers have all been there throughout, trying out newer ways of teaching, innovating all the time, bending backwards. So they also need that thumbs up. I will call for a celebration, because I think we need to celebrate our edu warriors who are having done all
That's
that they
true.
have done.
I
Yeah.
think
So
you're right in what you say about teachers, because I think, just imagine, I mean, the privacy that the teachers have had to give up. As you said, there are parents who are hovering over their children, trying to make sure, and before it was just about the teacher and this intimate bond with children or their students, but now that is open up to, you have very judgmental parents also looking at how their children are being taught, and I'm sure that is a very, very difficult experience for teachers.
And
So
as
hats
and I
off,
would
really.
also like to add
Yeah.
one more thing. Apart from that, they were courageous to bear their house. You
I
open your
agree.
house for
I agree.
everyone's
It's
viewing,
such an
and
invasion
I
of
think you
privacy.
require a lot of courage to do that.
Yes, definitely. That's
But
such an
one more
important
thing,
point.
positive thing is that parents are highly appreciative. Also, they never realize that how much effort the teacher is doing. Teacher is now adopting a blended teaching learning method, bringing in
Yeah.
puppetry, storytelling, all these. So they are
No,
very, very appreciative.
ma'am, I
Nursery
think
children,
you're,
as Mr. Alok was saying, they are
yeah.
coming to the school gate to have a look at their teacher. Who is she? Who is teaching us? Let us see our ma'am. So
Miss
that is the
Acharya, I
connection
think,
and bonding also.
yes, I think you're very fortunate in having grateful parents, but I don't know if everyone's had that same experience or not. I think because a lot of parents have felt frustrated, and I think that they've been demanding of schools, and I think sometimes those demands. I mean, I just think it must have been really tough to kind of cater to all of that. Okay, Akash Roy Chowdhury, you spoke most about trying to handle problems of children who were left out in the digital divide. Do you see, when you go back, do you think it's going back to the old way, or is there a hybrid new world that you're entering now of school education?
That's a very, very good question. I was just listening to these two ladies speak, and I was thinking about like if you can picture an orange, you will only get an orange. You will only get orange juice when you squeeze that orange. And what has happened is that the entire education system, the perspective, the vision, the purpose, everything has been squeezed at in this lockdown period. And what we have found is the reality that we were not prepared to meet this situation. uh, I think that 10 months or 11 months that we have spent, and maybe a couple of months more that we will spend in this lockdown where children are not coming, I think that decision making at the highest level has to gear up for providing education. And what we have learned from this lockdown is that technology can be a great tool to do that. We have time from 8 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon to do school. We have number of workshops that we have to do within that time frame. The lockdown has taught us that it is not really true. You can have workshops for children even in the evening. So the time barrier has gone out of the window. But again, reiterating that at the very top level in our country, administrators that decide on the course of education need to be not just educated people, but educators, so that the whole system is designed to take everybody together at the same pace. The lockdown has told us or shown to us that there is a large, very large group of children that actually got left behind because the systems were not there. The quality of educators was not there. The transfer to technology, the ability to do that was not there. So I think that in the future, in the way we teach, will be a hybrid method. I think we need to get the best of both the worlds. We need to
Yeah.
use it. We need to use our heads as educators on how to do what to do, and from the grassroots level, at the absolute primary level till class 12, this life that the children live for about 14 years needs to gear up to educate them, not just to give exam, which we
Yeah.
have recently found out.
Yes, for sure. And Ms. Singhla, what's the, as a counselor, what would you tell the other panelists over here who are the, the teachers and stuff? What is it that they should do when the children come back?
Definitely, first thing that we need to do with our children coming back after such a long time is to take care of they were lonely at home. They were definitely missing their friends. So we have to give them time to cover that up and be in school. They should spend time with their groups, with their classmates, with their. If we start with classes day one and they don't get time to do that, we might have some issues in the school because children, handling them in such cases become very difficult. Yes, so we have to give them proper periods to interact, games period. If you take their games period, I know how they react. They don't like when you take their games period. So we need to give them more opportunity to interact with their friends. Online teaching has taken care of their lessons. Yes. So redoing them might not help so much, but taking care of them, their mental health is more important now. So if before the new session start, we have this time to let them cope up and get back into gear to join the new session.
That's very true.
Uh, Sunetra, you have
Muted,
to
I think.
unmute
Yeah.
Mute mode.
yourself.
Hi. Yeah. So, sorry, this is the problem with new technology. You can never really get
Yes.
used to it. No, so I just wanted to we're kind of out of time now, but I wanted to end by handing over to Professor Rishikesh and asking you that, I know that your survey dealt mostly with government school students and educators there. Is there anything, hearing the experiences from most of the teachers here and principals over here who who work with the private schools, is there anything good that came out? It's been pretty bleak, but is there anything good that we can take away from this?
Mr.
Sir, you are
Akash,
on
You're
mute
muted
mode.
now. Yeah.
yeah. I'm not muted. Am I audible now?
No,
Yeah.
you are now. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So as Mr. Akash was saying, there are many things that we have learned over the last 8 months. And one clearly is that the fundamentals of education remain. What is education? Why do children come to school? And I think that has got reiterated. Parents are also now aware. One, they're aware, as everyone was sharing, the teachers' onerous responsibilities and the kind of load that teachers take. But at the same time, they've understood what really education is. Now,
Yeah.
education has to make learners become self-learners, right? Peer learners, collaborative learners, right? So this learning to learn in different ways is what the focus ought to be on. And I think with the experiences from the private sector, the various things that have been tried out, these are things that the entire public education system can take on. And in fact, there are many experiments in the public education system which the private schools can take on. Beautiful out of the box approaches that teachers in public schools have used during this time, and everything pointing to this fact that teachers and the agent of the teachers agency has to be respected, because they are the ones there dealing with the children. Give them back their agency and they will do the job. Trust the teachers, right? So these are the messages that are coming out very clearly, that we have to respect the teacher's agency has to be there. And similarly, the learner as an agent, learning to learn being the focus is the way forward. Even when we come back to a normal full-blown face-to-face method, or the method should not be didactic, right? That's not really going to give us the kind of outcome that we expect out of educational systems. And I think this cross-learning between what has been tried out in the mass public education system as well as in many private schools would be the things that one would look forward to as the big takeaways from these 10 months of traumatic period for children and educators.
It truly has been. I think whether one's in a government school or a private school, the trauma of this has been a shared experience that is not just something that here in India, but across the world as well. I think we're going to see lots of literature and books about this in the coming years as well. It's going to take some time to process. But thank you all for sharing, giving us your time, sharing such insight. It has really been helpful. Thanks very much to all of you, and thanks for joining us. Goodbye.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.